Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a woman calling an animal park to inquire about a job. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Bender's Animal Park, hello.
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to ask whether you have any jobs available.
What sort of work are you looking for? Is that permanent or part-time or...
Actually, I'm just looking for temporary work. I'm a student.
Oh, right. I'll just get a form and ask you a few questions. Then I'll pass your application on to our recruitment section. Is that okay?
Fine, thank you.
So, starting with your name.
It's Jane Lammerton.
Is that Lammerton?
There's only one M in it.
Oh, right. And your address?
It's 42 West Lane.
Right. And is that in Exeter?
Yes.
OK. And can you give me your mobile phone number?
07792 430 921.
Right. Now, the next thing is, when are you available to start work?
I finish college on the 8th of June. That's in 3 weeks' time. But I can't start work till the 11th because I've got a hospital appointment on the 10th of June.
No problem. Now, I need to ask you a few questions about the type of job that might be suitable. Do you have any particular kind of work in mind? It doesn't necessarily mean that you will get work in the field that you want, but I can record your preferences.
Well, I'd do anything. And I have worked as an assistant animal keeper before, when I was still at school. But I'm studying at a catering college now, and I'd really like to get some experience as an assistant cook if possible.
Right. So that's your first choice. Have you done that kind of job before?
No, but I've helped my aunt sometimes. She runs a cafe in Exeter.
Would you say you've got any relevant skills then?
Well, I'm used to using the kind of equipment you usually find in a kitchen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
OK. And I know you're still studying, but do you already have any qualifications related to that kind of work? A hygiene qualification, for example?
I haven't, no. But I've got a certificate in food handling. I did it before I decided to become a full-time student.
Fine. OK. That means you wouldn't need any specific training if you did get the kind of work you wanted. But you'd have to do a short course on first aid. All our new employees do that. It just takes half a day, and most people find it generally useful.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is.
Well, that's about it, really. Just one last thing. Can you give me the name of someone who would give you a reference, like a previous employer or...
Oh, yes. You can put Dr. Ruth Price.
OK. Is that one of your college lecturers?
She's my college tutor. She's known me for over 2 years, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. In fact, she's given me a reference before.
Fine. We'd probably contact her by phone. Do you happen to know her number?
I've got it on my phone, yes. It's 0208 685 114. That's a landline.
Good. Well, as I say, I can't promise anything, but I'll pass your application on, and you should hear in a few days. Is there anything else?
Just one thing. I suffer from a particular type of colour blindness, and sometimes employers have to make special arrangements for that.
OK, I'll make a note of that. It won't be good that you've made us aware of it. You can provide us with more details if you're offered a job.
OK. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2.
You will hear an audio guide introducing visitors to a museum. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15 on page 3. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to the Global Museum, located at the heart of this truly multicultural city, which is home to more than 60 different nationalities. The museum has a number of exciting displays and exhibitions, and this audio guide is designed to help you make the most of your visit. Altogether, the museum has 18 different galleries, and this season sees the opening of 3 new exhibitions. We recommend that you begin your tour by visiting this season's highlights. The Heritage Clothes exhibition is located in Gallery 5 of the museum. People who live in the area have spent 2 years preparing this exhibition, which brings together some of the fascinating garments traditionally worn in their own communities. They research the history of their community's clothing traditions and the customs and rituals associated with them. Altogether, 16 countries are represented, from Ghana to Korea, from Turkey to Nepal. The photographs that accompany each display case were taken by some of the City College students who are studying design and show the clothes being modelled by the real people who wear them in the course of their everyday lives. Another highlight this season is the exhibition called Toys from the Past, which can be found in Gallery 9. This exhibition, which will appeal to people of all ages, is on tour throughout the country and will be here for 10 weeks only. The exhibits include dolls made over 100 years ago with beautiful porcelain faces and, in some cases, real hair. The collection covers the favourite toys such as wooden train sets from many different generations and provides plenty of interest for children and adults. The gigantic board games, which are laid out on the gallery floor, are one of the most popular activities in the exhibition and should not be missed. This exhibition concludes with a special display of miniature toys. These small objects are on loan from countries all over the world and in some cases measure no more than a few centimetres. There's a tiny car made from matchsticks, a toy aeroplane complete with pilot and passengers made out of seashells, and some exquisite little buildings no higher than 4 centimetres.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20 on pages 3 and 4. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
The final gallery highlight of the season is the Biscuit Gallery, at number 15. Many years ago, this city was famous for its biscuits, although today the factory no longer exists. Did you know, for example, that before biscuits were packed in paper or cardboard boxes, biscuit tins were fashion items? The factory made tins, round, square, triangular, hexagonal, for a whole range of different occasions, to celebrate national events, festivals, famous faces and so on. One fascinating display deals with people's favourite biscuits. There are sweet biscuits and savoury ones, biscuits filled with jam and biscuits filled with currants, biscuits with pink, yellow and white sugar icing, or coloured sugar flowers. When the factory finally closed, it announced that people's favourite biscuit was not, as you might expect, a chocolate biscuit or one filled with jam and cream, but a plain, savoury one which was eaten with cheese. When you get to the end of the exhibition, there's an entertaining hands-on activity to fill your own biscuit tin. All the biscuits ever produced by the company are piled up on a table along with various tins. The biscuits are made out of thin pieces of wood, but the weight, colours and shapes replicate the original biscuits. Your job is to fill a tin with biscuits so that when the lid is taken off, they sit there as neatly as they did when the job was done by machine. It's not as easy as it looks. If you would like to buy a memento of your visit, there is a museum gift shop selling postcards, souvenirs and handmade pottery next to the information desk on the ground floor. And finally, if you don't want to carry your coats and bags around with you during your visit, please make use of the free lockers provided by the museum. Enjoy your visit.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
You will hear 2 undergraduates doing a research methods course. A girl called Leela and a boy called Jake having a seminar with their tutor. Now you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 24.
So the task I gave you both was to choose an article about a small-scale research project.
Yes.
You were then required to try to reproduce the research procedures in your own context, i.e. try it out for yourselves.
Yeah, and that's what we've done.
Great. So I'd like you to tell me a bit about the article and why you chose it.
Well, the article's written by 2 university lecturers who had started using crosswords to help their students revise terminology for exams.
And the crosswords were designed and set on computers.
And we selected the article because, well, it seemed an accessible topic, even though we weren't familiar with the technique. You know, using IT to design crosswords for higher education.
That's a good reason. So these lecturers wanted to see how well this innovation was received by their students.
Yes.
So how did you go about reproducing the research?
Well, we drew up a list of terms from one of our own modules and designed a crossword for revising these terms.
Then we asked our classmates to try out the crossword and give us feedback, their opinions on how they felt about using the technique.
Was it easy to find participants?
It wasn't easy at first, but then we convinced them that by taking part in the research, they were actually benefiting themselves by preparing for an exam, which is coming up later this term.
And it worked.
Good. So how did you find out what the students thought about doing the crosswords?
A questionnaire. The original article used a 2-page long questionnaire. There were lots of excellent questions on it, but the whole section on difficulties using IT is now obsolete. Old-fashioned even though it had only been written a couple of years ago.
So you designed a shorter version?
Yeah. Then we sent it to the 40 students by email and got 28 replies. I was taken aback by the fact that everybody we talked to thought this was a good return. I mean, the responses were well written. People had taken a lot of care, but I was really disappointed with the low numbers.
Yes, an important lesson to learn for an apprentice researcher.
Yeah.
Now you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
So what results did you get?
Well, basically, the responses were extremely positive. The students said that doing the crossword on a computer helped them really focus on the work in hand and not be distracted, which is something that commonly happens with other ways of doing revision.
Yeah, that was really clear. But something that struck me was that having fun hardly featured in their responses, nor did anything to do with spelling of hard words, which I thought would be an obvious benefit.
No? Okay.
Respondents also said that doing the crossword hadn't really increased their general motivation to study, but that it had highlighted the gaps in their memory so they knew what further work was necessary.
Right. So how did your findings tally with those of the original researchers?
There were lots of similarities, but...
There were probably 2 main differences. We found that more males than females liked the technique, whereas the original study found the reverse.
Also, our respondents said they wouldn't mind doing a crossword as a final official exam, whereas in the original study, students said they would hate doing it even if it meant having a shorter test.
But of course, both sets of respondents said they'd be interested in doing more crosswords for informal purposes, revision, and so forth.
Right. So let's have a think about the whole project and what you've learned from doing it.
Well, it was very time-consuming.
Yeah, and I don't think we managed that aspect very well.
It could have been worse. I mean, we didn't have a lot of data, so we didn't have to spend ages processing it. And of course, we'd already done a course on numerical data processing, so there wasn't much new there.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I think we designed our questions well so that they gave us manageable data.
Yeah, it really helped having the original study to guide us, as it were. And that helped us to see what a good research instrument is.
What a good questionnaire should be like.
Absolutely. We got a lot from that. But when we were writing up the project, I'm not sure whether we'll know how to acknowledge the work of the original study. You know, our referencing.
No, that's something we'll both have to work on in the future.
Actually, that part's been great. Finding ways to share and support another person.
That's the real plus from the project. Learning ways to do that.
Well, it's obviously been very successful.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You will hear a lecture about the Great Barrier Reef. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Despite its name, the Great Barrier Reef isn't just one large coral reef. Rather, it's a system of coral reefs that stretches along the east coast of Australia, covering an area of around 300,000 square kilometres. The Great Barrier Reef is composed of approximately 3,000 individual reefs, which range in size from 1 hectare to more than 10,000 hectares each. In addition, around 600 islands are scattered throughout the area, particularly at the northern and southern ends. The reefs themselves are composed of over 400 different kinds of coral, the largest variety of corals found anywhere in the world. Thousands of species of sea animals live in and around the reefs. Altogether, approximately 1,500 species of fish inhabit the reef area, including a number of different kinds of sharks. One of the more interesting mollusks to be found in the reefs is the giant clam. This huge shellfish can live for more than 100 years and can weigh as much as 200 kilos. Sea mammals abound in the area, which serves as a breeding ground for certain types of whales, many of which are endangered. Over 200 species of sea and shorebirds feed, roost or nest among the reefs and islands. Many types of reptiles can also be found living among and near the reefs. Saltwater crocodiles, for example, inhabit the marshes along coastal areas. Amphibians include at least 7 species of frogs inhabiting the islands of the reef. Unfortunately, this wondrous area of the world is threatened by climate change. Rising sea temperatures have led to an effect called coral bleaching, that is, large numbers of corals dying off, especially in the shallower areas of the reef. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority is attempting to find effective ways to deal with this issue that threatens the reef. One proposed solution involves shading the reef in certain areas to help keep the surrounding water temperatures down.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.